Well, is the CIA behind the intense Occupy Wall Street crackdown? We may never know for sure, as the agency is not divulging any information on the subject. By law, the CIA is not allowed to be involved in domestic matters, only foreign intelligence issues. But after seeing the organized, almost military response to the demonstrations throughout the nation, some are raising eyebrows as to what is behind the crackdown and who exactly is involved. One agency, D.C.-based Partnership for Civil Justice, filed a request to the CIA to get some answers, but their request was denied. Now, this raises many questions, and to help me answer them, I am joined by Mara Verheyden-Hillard, Executive Director of the Partnership for Civil Justice Fund. Welcome, Mara. So when you requested this information from the CIA under the Freedom of Information Act, what response did you get?
Well, it's Mara Verheyden-Hillard, but we had filed...
Sorry about that.
It's fine, it happens. We filed, the Partnership for Civil Justice Fund filed a series of Freedom of Information Act demands against different government agencies when we saw this quick succession of evictions and crackdowns on Occupy encampments around the country. And the Central Intelligence Agency is one of the agencies that we ask that they release records that are in their possession related to the Occupy movement and any involvement that they may have. Now, there are a number of responses they could have given, but the response they gave us is extremely disturbing. They wrote back saying that they would refuse to process the request, basically on the grounds that if the CIA had any involvement, it would have been illegal for it to have involvement, and therefore their record system is not constructed in a way that they could possibly search for their involvement. And they refused to process the request.
But aren't they, by law, under the Freedom of Information Act, required to come up with these documents? If
they have them, yes. And they could have written back saying they were conducting a search. They could have written back saying they conducted a search and found nothing if there was nothing to find. But what is it that they have to hide? Instead, they wrote back, they cited their authorizations under the law and the fact that they're not supposed to be engaged in domestic intelligence activity, and then responded by saying, therefore, we won't process your request, and that we are incapable of properly searching for any evidence of our activity. Now, I note that this is on the heels of the Associated Press reports that have come out where they did their own investigative reports into the CIA's involvement with the NYPD. And the NYPD in New York City has been, as we know, ground zero for Occupy Wall Street.
Now, after their response, they're not giving you these documents. Do you think that they're trying to hide these records?
If they have them, apparently they are trying to hide them. I mean, why not write back and say that they're conducting a search, or that they conducted a search, and if they genuinely didn't have anything, they didn't have anything. But they wrote back and said they would refuse to process the request.
So what indication, obviously something raised a suspicion where you wanted to get this information. What indication are we seeing that the CIA was in fact involved in the crackdown of these protests throughout the country?
Well, what we have seen is around the country in quick succession there are crackdowns and evictions all around the United States. We know that there's been coordination because there's been admissions from different government officials that there was coordination among different mayor's offices and police agencies, and they discussed talking points and tactics for dealing with the Occupy movement. And there's a real question as to federal involvement. I mean, I don't think anyone would credibly suggest that the federal government is not evaluating, is not looking at, is not considering how to deal with this massive movement taking over the United States and inspiring people worldwide. Of course they are. So we have simply asked the CIA and other federal agencies to turn over and make public their documents related to any coordination or involvement they have had in these crackdowns. And that's what the Partnership for Civil Justice Fund is trying to obtain right now.
So if the CIA is involved, that raises a lot of serious legal questions because that breaches both departmental code and national legislation. Could we talk about the legal implications of this?
Sure. Well, the CIA, has a very ugly history in the United States of domestic surveillance, going from certainly throughout the Vietnam War era, the Civil Rights Movement, and it was exposed during the COINTELPRO period and the Church Committee hearings. And the CIA had Operation Chaos and other mechanisms where they were directly spying on people in the anti-war movement and the Black liberation movement. And that conduct is barred by law. But as we've seen, obviously, the U.S. intelligence agencies have really run aggressively wild over people's fundamental rights, both in the United States and worldwide, in the last decade. And we've seen no effort from the government or this administration to restrain them. The fact that the CIA is operating in with the NYPD in New York City raises very significant issues as to whether or not they are currently, at this moment, in violation of fundamental laws restricting their conduct. And we want to know what role they have with the Occupy movement.
Now, we are dealing with the CIA, so who would be tasked with investigating the CIA? Because obviously they can't investigate themselves, so what would that look like?
Well, this is always a problem when agencies, then turn to police themselves. They're not very successful at it. One way to do it is what we're doing, is for the public to make a demand, and for the public and the population to insist that the government make public its records, that people have a right to know what the government of the United States is doing. And that's the step that we've taken. That's the first step to make these demands. If we need to go to court to obtain information and to try and get a judicial order forcing the government to open its records, then we will. We don't think that the government of the United States has a right to keep secret books on the people of the United States.
So you are prepared to take legal action against the CIA?
Yes, we are.
Now, I understand that you also filed similar requests with other agencies.
Yes, we have filed requests with the Department of Homeland Security. We have filed them with the FBI, with the Park Service and the Department of Justice as well. We're also filing requests all around the United States with local municipalities and police agencies and mayors' offices to get information on their coordination as well as their dealing with the federal law enforcement authorities.
Any response yet from those agencies?
We are actually getting some documents we expect shortly from the District of Columbia, and we expect others to also be producing or refusing to produce. And if they do, we are prepared to take legal action to get this material.
And really quickly, I want to ask you, with the response that we are seeing from this Occupy Wall Street, the demonstrations, why the feds would get involved and why we saw such a strong, almost military response to the movement.
Well, it's true. We're seeing a military or paramilitary response from police agencies in the United States. And as I said, this is a movement that's really inspiring people. It's putting front and center the fundamental injustices in society in the United States and around the world. And people are demanding change. And that's when change happens. When you see huge numbers of people taking to the streets and refusing to take no for an answer, the government is really going to have to look at that and decide how they can handle it, or if they can handle it, because people have demands right now, and those demands are not going to go away.
Mara, thank you so much for weighing in on this. That was Mara Verheyden-Hillard. He is the Executive Director of the Partnership for the Civil Justice Fund.
Thank you so much.